As a medical student, the strength of my study routine basically dictates how well I'm going to do in a given course. And this is the case for most students, regardless of if you're in high school, college, or graduate school. And so over the past few months, I've been looking to develop a study routine that I can really rely on, something where I can just throw myself on autopilot and trust my study routine to take over. So to start, all right. Guys, I don't actually really use any of these things. What's up, YouTube? If you're new here, my name is J.R. Smith. I'm a first-year medical student at the Mayo Clinic, and in the last video, we talked about two key principles to just learning in general: reps and experience. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through the routine that I personally use to maximize these two principles. And first, I just want to emphasize that I break my day up into two distinct parts. The first part of the day is where I review material, and the second part of the day is where I introduce new material or preview material. Don't worry guys, I promise by the end this is all going to make sense. I'm going to start with the second part of my day because it'll make the first part a little easier to understand. So in the evenings and the afternoons, after I've already done my lectures and all the other things that I have going on, I'm just home. There's nothing else mandatory that I have to do. This is a great opportunity to preview the next day's lecture. Previewing one day in advance is extremely beneficial because it gives you a first pass of the material at a pace that you're comfortable with. Have you ever been in class and the professor is zooming through material and it seems like everybody else knows exactly what's going on and you're just kind of sitting there like, yeah, you're gonna want to avoid that. And getting a strong first pass of the material before class is the best way to set yourself up for a successful lecture. And you want the first pass of the material to be really thorough. Don't just skim through the slides that you can check it off of your to-do list. Look to really learn the material. This will also help you learn how to learn by yourself without anybody actively teaching you, which is an important skill to start developing. So I'll spend some time going through the PowerPoint slides for the next day's lecture, and I'll use things like YouTube or Google for concepts that I don't really understand from the slides to make sure that I really have a good grasp of this material. Once I've previewed the lecture, then I'll unlock relevant Anki cards related to that lecture. Now, if you follow this channel, you know how I feel about Anki.
It's the best. Love it.
If you're not familiar with Anki, it's basically a tool used to review material using spaced repetition. Material will appear on a flashcard, and based on how well you know that material, you may see that flashcard again in 5 minutes if you didn't know it at all, or you can see it in 5 months if you really have that material down. Now, I use a lot of pre-made decks, and these decks are just the collection of cards that either older medical students here have created that correspond to our lectures, or pre-made decks that are widely used by medical students in general that correspond to both my courses and preparation for Step 1. And Step 1 is this really big, really important exam that medical students take at the end of their second year. I will occasionally create cards for a specific lecture if there were any gaps in the pre-made decks, but once I have all of the cards ready for the next day's lecture, I'll go through all of these cards as my final studying for the evening. So if you've been keeping track, I will have now gotten 2 reps of the material under my belt. One from previewing the lecture and using YouTube and Google to make sure that I really comprehend all of the material that I'll be presented with tomorrow, and then a review of this material that I just learned using Anki, which really helps solidify the material. And depending on the class, it can take anywhere from 2 to 3 hours for me to completely preview and prepare for the next day, but I can't emphasize enough how much previewing for the next day has truly helped me. And since it's usually the last thing that I have to do, and it's the only thing that I do in the evenings, I'm usually done studying around 7 or 8 p.m. Now that covers my study routine for the second part of the day. Now let's move on to the first part of the day, and if you know me or you've been following this channel for a while now, you may know that starts pretty early. I have lectures that usually begin at 8 a.m. and I want to get my primary review of the material done before then. This primary review comes, as you may have guessed, in the form of Anki. Now, just to make sure that there's no confusion, the afternoon and evening is for previewing the material, getting ready for the next day. The morning is for reviewing the material, making sure that I completely comprehend and understand all of the material I've learned so far. In the morning, I will see all of the cards from the previous day, now making this the third rep or the third review of this material. And I'll also see older material that I've been studying, including material from previous courses. Again, I have to remember all of the information from my previous courses in preparation for Step 1, and so I do this by staying up to date with the Anki cards for those courses. And some days, like the end of anatomy, I can have over 700 Anki cards due, and so the time that I have to wake up may get earlier and earlier.
It's Tuesday, 4:53 in the morning. I have about 550 or so Anki cards.
But again, once you master material, you won't actually see that material again for multiple months. And so yes, it's true that you will have thousands and thousands of cards by the end of your 2 years of medical school. Since they're spaced out using spaced repetition, the amount that you actually have every day will be a possible amount. Some days it may not be a reasonable amount, but still possible nonetheless. But doing it this way has been incredible for me for a few reasons. First, it's keeping me up to date with all the material that I need to know, not only for a specific course, but it's keeping me in a good place in terms of my preparation for my board licensing exams. Second, making a habit of reviewing material every day like this will avoid that last second rush to cram material before your test. Avoid that exam cram. We might have to put that on a t-shirt or something. But reviewing material early in the day before your lecture even starts is also amazing because there are few feelings better than actually being done with the majority of your work before the sun even rises. And then when I transition into lecture, I've already reviewed this material 3 times. So lecture is just the 4th rep, the 4th review of this material, solidifying it into my memory even that much more. Now, lecture usually ends around noon, and we may have a few meetings or other commitments that take up a piece of the middle of the day. But when you've already done the bulk of your studying before lecture and all you have left to do is previewing for the next day, then that middle of the day becomes a lot less stressful. You can actually be more present during whatever non-studying things you have going on. These are the parts of my routine that I make sure I accomplish every day, and it rarely involves committing more than 5 hours of personal studying outside of lecture, which I think is extremely possible, especially because of its ability to keep me on track and up to date with all the material I need to know. And guys, as students, studying is literally our job. If people can work from 9 to 5 every day, we can study for 5 hours. Now, when I don't have much going on between my review and my preview, I'll try to do as many practice questions as I can. Practice questions are, of course, amazing for test prep, and the more that you expose yourself to, the better. And in medical school, it's even more important to expose yourself to as many practice questions as possible because these questions won't only present themselves again in an exam, but they may present themselves in a real-life clinical experience. Now, I'd be lying if I said I crank out 2 hours worth of practice questions every day on top of my review and preview. Some days I don't get to any practice questions and all I do is my review and preview, and that is perfectly okay for me. Having this routine gives me free time, and a lot of times, most times, I use this time for non-school related things like this channel and most importantly time with Madison. Now this is my strategy for the week, but a lot of the principles carry into the weekend. The beginning of the day is the same, where I stay up to date with my reviews and make sure I get all of my Anki cards done. But since I don't have material to preview right away in the case of Friday and Saturday, I use this time primarily to kind of catch up with those practice questions. But most importantly, I use the added free time during the weekend to rest and recharge and just give myself the best chance at maintaining this routine during the following week. I found this strategy extremely effective for me, and I hope hearing what works for me helps you as you reflect on your personal strategies and you look to establish the routines that's going to work for you personally. If you have your own amazing study strategies, make sure to share them in the comments below so that we can all benefit from our shared knowledge. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. That always shows a ton of love and support for the channel. If you haven't yet, consider subscribing and tapping that bell. New videos every week. You're not going to want to miss one. And of course, keep evolving, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Guys, I don't even know the last time that I've opened like a paper book. And do you know how long it took me to find a pen that wasn't like an Apple pen? Guys, this isn't even a notebook. This is a calendar. I have fully committed to the electronic age.